the Ajamila Katha to Parshit Maharaj. So rather than just in the interest of time, rather than going sequentially through the verses, I'll summarize the Katha. So Ajamil was a very pious Brahman who lived in the area of Kanikubja. So Kanikubja is the general area of western Uttar Pradesh, centered around what is right now Kanpur. And it is understood that the Brahmins from that area are very, very elevated. They are called Kanikuj Brahmins. So at least in India, two Brahmins are considered to be very, very pakka. From the south, they are the Saraswat Brahmins, and in the north there is the Kanikubja Brahmins. The Saraswats are stronger in the main meditation is study of the scriptures, very strong in scriptures. Most of the followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu were actually Saraswat Brahmins, Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami. So they migrated to the north, but originally Saraswat Brahmins. Kanikubji Brahmins are very strong in karmakant, in rituals. So there is a saying that Teen Kanikubja or Tera Vithi. There are 3 Kanikubjas, they will have 13 Angitis like fires. Because they have one to cook the offering, one to cook for themselves, one to cook in the evening. So very, very, very ritualistic. So Ajamil was a very pakka Kanikuj Brahman and lived a very pious life. He was married to a qualified young Brahmin woman who was very beautiful. And both of them together, they served their parents and lived a very spiritual, God-centered life. So one day it so happened that Ajamil was traveling in the forest and he happened to come upon Sukadeva Goswami says a 4th class person, which is a Shudra, engaged shamelessly with a prostitute. And they were both intoxicated and they were both laughing and frolicking. And Ajamil observed that and he walked away. So even though he walked away, he carried the memory of this incident in his heart. And as much as he could try, he could not stop thinking about it. So as it's said that what we think we eventually feel, what we feel we start willing, and what we will we do. So it all starts from thinking. So he kept meditating on that incident and of course on the woman, and ultimately he realized that he could not control his desires. So the woman who was a prostitute, he approached her and he engaged her as a maidservant. And of course, engaging as a maidservant, was of course just a ploy. He was enjoying with her as he engaged with her, and he was so much invested in her that in a very short period of time he drove away his wife. He kicked out his old parents. He usurped all their land and all the property, and he used that all to support his new wife, the prostitute. So Sukadeva Goswami said that in this way he was supporting this woman and her 10 sons. And so by the use of the pronouns, Prabhupada Prabhupada explains that Ajamil did not know whose sons were they, and except for the youngest son. So there were 9 other sons, and because by the nature of her profession she was associating with many men, he did not know who the sons were, but he was so attached to the woman that because they were her, they were from her body, he was supporting them. And then how was he supporting them? So it says he was doing 3 kinds of activities. That he would kidnap people and hold them for ransom. He was gambling and taking money through that, and through cheating. He was cheating and robbing people. So in this way, Ajamil spent 88 years of his life. So even though he was old, he was still engrossed in all this material activities, and also engrossed in sense gratification, because his youngest son was just 5 years old. So one can understand that he was so much invested in enjoying with this woman. So when the youngest son was born, he was named Narayan. And it's not mentioned in the Bhagavatam, but it's mentioned in other scriptures that why did sinful Ajamil name his son Narayan? So the pastime is given that once Ajamil was gone, he was doing whatever stuff he did, stealing, etc. And it so happened that a group of sadhus came to the village. And as is customary for sadhus, that wherever night falls, they try and take shelter from some grahastha in the house, in the village. So then they asked the children in the village that is there a qualified Brahman where we can spend the night? And children being children, they are naughty by nature. So they said, yeah, there is Mahatma Ajamil who lives in this village. And should go to his house. He will take very good care of you. I said, okay. So they were simple sadhus. They went to the house, and at that time, Ajamil's wife, she was pregnant with the last child. So when they came to the house, they got a better understanding of what was going on. But being sadhus, the nature of the sadhu is to give mercy where it is most needed. So they asked for shelter, and so there were some places of piety. So she said, yeah, you can stay, and she provided them with at least in UP it's called Seedha. So Seedha is uncooked grains. So she gave them some rice and some dal, and they cooked their food and they ate. They spent the night. In the morning when they were going, she said, give me some blessings. And they said that if you take her advice, you will be blessed. That when your son is born, you name him Narayan. She said, okay. So when Ajamil came back, then she related this incident to Ajamil. And Ajamil said, okay, we have to give him some name. So these people are given. So that's how they named the child Narayan. And because he was the youngest child, Ajamil was very, very affectionate towards him. So Prabhupada explains that in any family, the youngest child gets the most affection. And Sukdev Goswami actually, he spends quite a few verses describing the nature of interaction between Ajamil and Narayan. That when Ajamil would eat, then while eating he would call Narayan, saying, Narayan, come here and sit with me and eat. And when he would see Narayan playing, he would say, Narayan, play carefully, don't get hurt. Or when Ajamil would sleep, he would say, Narayan, come, time to go to sleep. So in this way he was constantly, unknowingly, he was chanting Narayan, Narayan, Narayan And ultimately, uh, when his allocated time had finished, the time for him to die had come, then the Yamadutas, they approached Ajamil, and so the Yamadutas have what is called a pash. A pash is like a noose, and with the noose, it's a subtle thing. With the noose, they catch the subtle body and pull it out of the gross body. So the Yamadutas are described as being awkward-looking creatures. They had big teeth. They had fierce eyes. Their hair were awry, going in all directions. And understanding that Ajamil was sinful, they threw the pash and began to pull out his subtle body. So seeing the Yamadutas, Ajamil was terrified. And out of fear, he started calling for his son. He started saying, "Oh Narayan, oh Narayan." And as soon as he started saying Narayan, then 4 creatures appeared. So there were 3 Yamadutas and 4 Vishnudutas appeared. So in contrast to the Yamadutas, the Vishnudutas, they were godly, with handsome features, 4 hands, and speaking in very pleasing words. The Yamadutas were speaking in very harsh words. They were cursing Ajamil. But the Vishnudutas, they were speaking in very pleasing words, but in a very strong commanding voice. They forbade the Yamadutas from taking the soul of Ajamil. So the Yamadutas themselves were very surprised because they never seen the Vishnudutas. Their business is to take the soul from the sinful people. So never before they had seen Vishnudutas. So they themselves were shocked, and they were examining them, and they said that, "What kind of creatures are you? That based on your bodily features, you look like you're some kind of demigods, and based on the way that you speak, based on your sobriety, you look like you're denizens of some higher planets. But we've never seen somebody like you. And regardless of us not meeting you sooner, it looks like you don't know who we are." So Vishnuduta said, "Okay, tell us who you are." And the Yamaduta said that we are representatives of Lord Yamaraj. And in all these 3 worlds, nobody can disobey the summons of Yamaraj. And they glorify their master. That everywhere in the 3 worlds is his eyes. So it is said that every activity that we do is observed by Yamaraj. And that's how he knows what is the suitable punishment that awaits. Not only Yamaraj, but there are 12 witnesses to every activity. The indwelling Paramatma, Surya, Vayu, the directions, day, night, evening. So this way there are 12 witnesses who are constantly witnessing all our activities. So the Yamaduta said that we are servants of that person. So it is said that when there is a great person or a big person or an influential person, then the servants actually they pretend to be more important. They say like, "Don't you know who we are?" So the master may be humble, but the servants will be arrogant. That our master is so great, and master is this, and master is that. And so then they say that you please go away right now, otherwise all of you will be in big trouble. So then Vishnuduta said, we'll go away. After you explain to us that why are you taking the body of, or the soul of this poor Ajamila, who is sinless? What is the basis on which you evaluate that a person needs to be punished? So this was the young dutas are subject matter experts in this area. So for this they spoke eloquently. And they go systematically from top to bottom. We have the Vedas. In the Vedas appears Dharma. Through Dharma, we understand what needs to be done and what should not be done. One who violates this injunctions or prohibition is considered to be a sinner. And our duty is to take those sinners and punish them. The purpose of punishing them is that the reactions to their sins are negated and therefore they are freed of the sin and can continue with their life. So the Vishnudutas are patiently listening to all this. Now, in the course of describing this whole process, the Vishnudutas, so I was hearing to the katha on this by Radha Govind Maharaj, and Radha Govind Maharaj has a humorous way of presenting things. So he was saying that that they had been taught a script. So they had recited the script, that this is what happens, this is what happens. Now, as part of the script also is that they are glorifying the Vedas. So where are the Vedas coming from? Vedas are coming from Lord Narayan. Who is this Lord Narayan? See, you don't know Lord Narayan? Lord Narayan, he is the creator. He is the source of Lord Brahma. All the material world, all the spiritual world, everything comes from Lord Narayan. He is the cause of all causes. He is the supremely independent. So the Vishnudutas, in a way, just like in a courtroom, so they are kind of pushing them into a corner. So after the young dutas finish their discourse, which ends with the glorification of Lord Narayan, then the Vishnudutas said that you should understand that this Lord Narayan that you are glorifying is not different from his name. And because Ajamila, he chanted the names of Narayan at the time of his death, we initially said he is sinless, and now we confirm that he is sinless. So in the 6th canto, 2nd chapter, there is a wonderful glorification of the potency of the Holy Name, where the Vishnudutas speak several beautiful verses talking about the potency of the Holy Name. And they say that, even if one chants in anger or in contempt, in envy or in humor, the name is potent. Because the young dutas, even though they don't explicitly say, but they could have said that, but he did not chant the name of Lord Narayan. He was calling out to his son. So for that implicit question, they give an explicit answer. And they give the analogy of a medicine. So they say that the potency of a medicine is not predicated on how much faith does the person have on the medicine. If the person takes the medicine, it will begin acting on it. Whether the person takes it grudgingly, whether the person takes it accidentally, or he takes it with faith. So that's the potency of the holy name. So Ajamila may have chanted unknowingly. He may have chanted in fear, but nevertheless he chanted the holy name. And the potency of the holy name is that it can counteract more sins than anybody can commit in any number of lifetimes. So they said that is the potency of chanting one name of Narayan. That more sins that a person can commit in unlimited lifetimes are negated by simply chanting even once, and that also accidentally, the holy name. So Ajamil, he's kind of dead and not dead. He's in that twilight zone. So he's watching this conversation happening, and he's looking at the Jamadutas, Vishnu Dutas, and then in his mind he's thinking, I hope the Vishnu Dutas win. And the conversation is going on, and finally the Vishnu Dutas, they speak to the Yam Dutas, and they say that one who has chanted the holy name of the Lord, even in your dreams, do not think of approaching them. So please go. So the Yamdutas, they released the body of Ajamil and they went back. So Ajamil is very happy, and then he turns and he approaches the Vishnu Dutas. He wants to give obeisances and he wants to ask more. But the Vishnu Dutas immediately disappear at that time. So now Ajamil, he comes to external consciousness, and for a while he's bewildered. He was like, that's a very strange dream that I saw. And then in my dream, I saw this wonderful conversation happening between two different kinds of people. But by and by, he realizes that what he has seen is not a dream. So then Ajamil goes into this mode of very, very strong repentance, that he reflects on his own life, that all these activities that I have done, just because I was subservient to one emotion in me, which is the emotion of lust. And because of that, I turned my old parents out, I drove away my chaste wife, and so many other sinful activities that I have done simply to satisfy. So it's interesting that he never blames the woman. He does not attribute blame to that woman. And not because of any affection to her, but because of the depth of his realization. That he understands that if it was not her, it would have been somebody else. But the root cause of it was that there was this dormant desire in him, which was just looking for, just like dry wood is looking for a spark to catch fire. So Ajamil's life after that is a reflection of hopefully his life before that is not something that we can relate to or we should relate to, but his life after that is. So Ajamil, he started following the injunctions of the scriptures. So he understood that the purpose of the Vedas is to establish a framework in which we can be protected. And then most importantly, he took up to the chanting of the holy name. So he went to the holy city of Haridwar, and there, for the remainder of his life, which was not very long, he lived for another 6 months, but for the period of 6 months, he offenselessly chanted the holy name. And when the time for his death came, then who does he see? So he sees the same 4 Vishnu Dutas. But now they're smiling and they're happy, and Ajamil, without any fear or without any trepidation, along with the Vishnu Duta, he ascends on a golden chariot, and the chariot takes him all the way back to Vaikuntha, where he actually comes face to face with the personality behind the name, the personality of Lord Narayan. So Sukadeva Goswami gives this benediction in the Bhagavatam, that if anybody hears this pastime with faith, then he gives them the personal assurance that they will never see the face of Yamaduta. And if they take shelter of the holy name, then they will undoubtedly make this their last birth. So, so I'll end here. There are 3 chapters. They could have taken much longer, but I condensed them. So Ajamila's pastime, one of Srila Prabhupada's personal pastime, personal favorite pastime to quote. He would speak about it very often, because it brings forth the potency of the holy name, and it also brings forth the eligibility to chant the holy name. So Ajamil had no qualifications. That he was 88 years old, and most of his life he spent in very strongly in the modes, very sinful person. That no qualifications. And how potent is the holy name? That even if one chants it without understanding its potency, it acts there. And what is the result of chanting the holy name? It far exceeds. So we had spoken about how, to negate one's past sins, Sukadeva Goswami had given 2 possible solutions to Parikshit Maharaj. The first one he had said was atonement, prayashchit. That you follow the prescribed methods of prayashchit, and that by that it will get negated. And Parikshit Maharaj rejected that, saying that is like the bathing of an elephant. The elephant will take bath and come back and become dirty again. So the process of atonement will always be accompanied by the commitment of more sins. And then he says, okay, then follow the path of Gyan. That through the path of Gyan, then there's no karma. So there's no karma, there's no reaction, so automatically you're freed from this cycle. And then Parikshit Maharaj rejected that also, saying that the pre-qualifications to do Gyan are very, very difficult. In order to embark on the path of knowledge, one has to have complete control on the senses. One has to be austere. One has to very, very strictly abide by the do's and the don'ts of the scriptures. So that's not possible. Very few people can do it. So he rejected that also. And Sukadeva Goswami was simply testing Parikshit Maharaj to see that he was actually ready to receive this higher knowledge. And on our behalf, he did receive that higher knowledge. So I'll stop here and see if there's any questions or comments.
This happened in which yuga?
It does not say. All it says is that Sukadeva Goswami says that I will now recite to you a very ancient pastime. And Sukadeva Goswami was speaking this 5,000 years ago. So even at that time it was very ancient. So, but it does not actually say which particular time it happened.
Because the age, it's 100 years in Kali Yuga and it multiplies by 10 in every yuga, right? It increases.
So the age is a question that often comes up, and it's not only in the context of Ajamil, but other personalities also, like Bharat Maharaj. It said that Bharat Maharaj was obviously in Satyug, and then he renounced. It said he renounced at a very young age, and he was 20 years old, or in his 20s. At that time, people lived for 100,000 years, right? So the general question of that in Satyug, when people live for 100,000 years, so does 20 years mean 20,000 years over there? What does it mean, right? So that part is something that not very clear, but suffice to say that just in terms of the ashrams, that Ajamil went from Grahastha ashram to being a vrad, very, very old person. Okay, Asi?
I have a comment and a question, they're slightly unrelated. So the comment I had was that at work I've seen, I I see many patients who are like at the end of their life, and there is an entity that in the medical terms they call it terminal restlessness, where the patient becomes very agitated. And my personal experience has been that they are actually seeing the enemy a lot of time. That they're screaming, many of them are acting out and saying, don't take me there, don't take, I mean, I've experienced this where they're saying things that I feel very strongly that it's indicative of seeing, because they're actually, when they come out of it momentarily, they sometimes say things like, there were two people here, did you not see them? They had horns on their head. They say some things like that. And so it points towards kind of seeing some personalities. And so my question is unrelated to that. My question is related to what you mentioned earlier, that Ajamila was a very pious Brahmin, but then this one sight or this one memory carried him to degradation. So we have so many impressions from so many lifetimes. So sometimes one wonders that what if some kind of thought passes through our head, or some memory lingers on in our mind, and at the time of death, that's what comes to your mind, or when you're close to dying. So how should one approach those millions of impressions and millions of thoughts?
Thank you. It's a good question. So that is certainly a fear that especially in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that whatever one thinks of at the time of death, one becomes that in the next birth. And Srila Prabhupada would say that one should not think of this as a mechanical process. That for devotees, the mercy of Krishna. In fact, one point he said that if a devotee cannot think, Krishna will think for him. So the whole process of bhakti is a little bit of endeavor and a lot of mercy. So hopefully through the process of bhakti, the samskars, they become weakened or subdued. Even if they are not, then Krishna's anugraha is there. That's the biggest redeeming factor. So that's why we always continuously call upon Krishna's mercy, because that's our endeavor is a little bit, but mostly it's His mercy. Thank you. True?
It was regarding similar, like when I talk about dormant desire, which when they find like suitable things, it comes out. So how do you get rid of dormant desires? They are not obvious.
Right. So Ajamila's pastime is testimony to the potency of both kinds of samskars, right? So when he was a Brahmin, he was a very pious Brahmin. And Sukadeva Goswami actually mentions that because of his purvarati, because he had previous attraction to the process of devotional service, to the Vedas, because of that, when he chanted the holy name, he actually chanted in what is called as namabhas. Right. So there are three ways that we can chant. The first is called
Offensive chant.
offensive chanting. I'm trying to think of the name of it. Namaprad. Thank you, Madhuri. So the first is Namaprad, which is offensive chanting, which probably is something stage that most of us are in. Right? Offensive chanting is one of the 10 offenses, or the root inattentive chanting, right? So that is Namaprad. And when one progresses from Namaprad, then one goes to Namabhas. And Namabhas is shadow of the name. And after that is, of course, Shuddhana there. So uh, so because of his purvarati, because Ajamila had practice of bhakti, practice of devotion, those were also the samskars that were very deep into his heart. And just like sinful desires may come out of those samskars, the pious desires may also come out of the positive samskars. There was actually a real life incident that was shared in this context by one of the persons giving the lecture about a man in Florida, I believe. And then he came to the temple. He seemed to be well off, and very favorable, very favorable. Very quickly took to the process. So then devotees, as they do there, after some time they asked him, that very happy to see how quickly you're taken to this process. Tell us a little bit more about yourself. And then he said that when I was a child, my father was a devotee. And every day morning he would get up and he would wake up the deities. So he would ring the bell to wake the deities, and I would get so upset at him because I would be sleeping at the time, and I would go ting 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 ting, and I would say, stop it, don't do it. But it is what what was his practice. And he said over time I left my house, he became wealthy, and, he married, his wife left him, so he was in a bad situation, he was feeling depressed, and he was kind of aimlessly wandering around. And as he was wandering around the street, he heard the same ting 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 sound, which was coming from the temple. And then he said that, if I went into the temple and I almost felt that I came back home. And then he continued his. So those samskars also, they carry and they're deeper. So even in Karmakand, that's the whole purpose that so many samskars are done. Right from the time of conception, all the Garbhoda samskar, Jati samskar, Janevu samskar. The reason they're all done is that all these strong, pious, favorable impressions, they get imprinted in one's subtle consciousness. And they are a protection. For us, our protection is that we have so many memories. We have memories of going to New Vrindavan, memories of going to Vrindavan, memories of going to Mangalarti, memory of one good round that we chanted, or one good mantra that we chanted. All that is hidden somewhere in our hearts. And by Krishna's mercy, when the right time is, they will manifest. Thank you. Anything else? Any other thoughts?
Yeah, just one comment, Prabhu. Just today only I was talking to one of my colleague who is also practicing Krishna consciousness, and we were talking about kids. And he just came back from India, and we were experiencing how the life is there, how the life is here, and all those things. And he said, I felt very happy that I got shelter of this process, and my kids I'm realizing it now, but I'm happy for my kids who are starting it from the very beginning. When he was saying that I don't know what's going to happen in time to come as things are changing, but the discussion we were having is that at least it's there in subconsciousness, and when they will be little bit elder to make their own decisions, we show that it will help them. So it kind of resonates what we were discussing, that these people are fortunate and it will help them in their life.
I remember personally that when earlier on we had started coming to the temple, and there was a devotee at the temple, and he said that I'll come to your house, I'll do a program. And so this program is like a very ISKCON kind of word. So you tell somebody outside, I'll come and do a program. I'm from computer background. I'm like, what program are you going to do over here? And they said, no, we'll sing a little bit and whatever. So his name was Rasikananda, and he came to our house. And we chanted for a little bit, and then he spoke. And one of the things that he said that, that stayed in my heart, he said that based on the authority of Krishna and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, I give you the assurance that at least you will get a human form of life. in your next birth, right? So he was speaking about Neha Vikramanasha's speech. That's why I mentioned it. He said, based on the authority of Krishna, I'm giving this assurance. And I found that to be very touching. That no ifs and buts, nothing. No that from now onwards, if you do this, if you do that, nothing. It was carte blanche, and then later on, of course, I understood that he's not speaking musically. The assurance he's giving is based on the assurance that has been given to him from the scriptures. Yeah. Any other thoughts? There's one question that's always asked in this pastime which no one has asked, and so I'm not going to answer it.
Oh, there was only one time.
Yes. No, not only one time, but the process of offensive and offenseless chanting. So the question that's asked is, since Prabhu has said, so is that, why is there so much of focus on chanting offenselessly when, when we see in Ajamila's pastime that he was chanting unknowingly. And not only by his action, but by the words of the Vishnu Dutas, it was also confirmed. So then, why do you keep beating us up? That get up in the morning and chant, and sit in one place and chant proper rounds, etc. So, the pastime of Ajamila also has the answer to that, right? That even though the chanting of Ajamil that rescued him from the Yamadutas was unknowingly, was maybe offensive, but what followed after that was his endeavor to chant purely, right? So in a way, from a high perspective, the means and the end, they are the same. If one leads to something, then the path can be considered to be the goal. So even by offensive chanting, you can reach the goal, because offensive chanting will develop in you the desire to chant offenselessly. And in case of Arjuna, that was just 6 months of time, because he had a literally speaking a life-changing experience. And our hope is that if not 6 months, then 6 years, if not 6 years, then 16 years, but at least in this particular lifetime, we are able to walk that journey. That when we started chanting, we chanted with a certain conception, and then the mercy of the holy name should manifest, and it should get us to the point where we end up chanting offenselessly there. The second part of this message is that so sometimes people say that when I chant, I cannot focus, so I don't chant. That rather than chanting offensively, better for me not to do offense. And it's a logical way of thinking. That that Prabhu is a revered guest, and I invite him to my house, and then when he comes to my house, I ignore him. And then he goes back, and then next day again I say, Prabhu, please come to my house. And then I ignore him again. And then next day again say, please come to my house. And then I ignore him again. Right? Isn't it better that I don't call him and inflict this pain on him again and again? So some people think like that. But what they underestimate is the mercy of the holy name. That we think that the holy name might take offense to us. But it is impossible for the holy name to take offense. And not only in the Bhagavatam, but in the Mahabharata, in the Ramayana, there are so many pastimes that talk about the potency of the holy name. In relationship to Lord Ram also, there is this pastime that there was a very simple person, and Narad Muni asked him to chant. And the person said, I'm very busy, I cannot chant. And so Narad Muni started saying that, how about when you get up in the morning? He said, no, at that time I do this. How about in the afternoon? It's like, that time I do this. So he says that you go in the morning to pass stool, right? I said, yes, of course. So why don't you chant at that time? Okay. So that's what he started doing. And the nature of the holy name is that he became very, very attached to it. So when he passed stool, he would chant very enthusiastically, Ram, Ram, Ram. So once Hanuman was flying over there, and he heard the name of Lord Ram being chanted, and then being a great devotee, he became very attractive. And he said, let me see who is chanting. So he went and he saw this person sitting over there, passing stool and chanting. So he became very angry. And Hanuman is Hanuman, so he punched him in the face. And so the man said, why did you punch me? And he said, how dare you? You don't know Lord Ram, this, that, how dare you chant his name? Don't do it from now on. He said, okay, I won't do it. And then Hanuman went back to Ayodhya Puri, and Lord Ram was sitting over there, and Lord Ram was sitting with his hand covering his cheek. So Hanuman gave his obeisances, and then Hanuman was feeling happy that he protected the purity of his worshipful Lord. And then Lord Ram removed his hand, and he saw that his cheek was all bruised. He says, how did your cheek get all bruised? He said, because he punched my devotee. I said, he's a devotee? And he said, yes. Why should you understand that the purity of my name is so weak that some kind of material impurity will overpower it? That he understood it better than you did, what the potency of my holy name is. So in Ramayana, in Mahabharata, in the Puranas, everywhere there is glorification through explicit verses. Verses like what's that verse? That Hare Nam, Hare Nam eva kevalam kalam naste naste gatir anita kalira dosha nidhe rajan asti ek mahavana kirtana deva krishna sya mukta sangaparam brajet. So many verses talking about the glory. There are so many pastimes also that illustrate the glory of this the holy name. So month of Kartik is very auspicious in a way that it empowers us to do. So for those of you who are not chanting, take up the chanting. For those of you who are chanting, take chanting more seriously, and if possible, chant more. Okay. Either for Kartik, chant more, or just chant more. But the most important thing in chanting is so chanting is like establishing a relationship with a person. And the nature of the relationship is that it has to be nourished on a consistent basis. Right? So almost all of you are married. So if your spouse one day comes to you and ignores you completely, and then next day is loving to you, and then comes the third day and doesn't give you the time of the day, so it doesn't speak very well about the nature of the relationship. Right? So relationships that are consistent are that's the foundation of nourishing strong relationships. So similarly in chanting, we're developing a relationship with the holy name. So whatever sankalp that we take, even if it is chanting one round, but we should chant that round without fail. We should not go below. If you're saying 4 rounds, chant 4 rounds. Right. So in the order of priority, the most important thing, of course, is to chant. Second most important thing is to maintain our breath, our sankalp. And whatever we have committed to chant, we chant. Good quality, bad quality, doesn't matter. We have to chant 4 rounds, chant 4 rounds. Chant 16 rounds, finish your. Even if it is counting, do your 16 rounds. And of course, right after that is while you're chanting, chant good rounds. So that and the reason it is prioritized like that is because by doing one, the second automatically comes. Like when we display our fidelity to the holy name, then the mercy of the holy name will give us the strength to maintain our vows. And when we are chanting, maintaining our vows, the quality of chanting will also improve there. Okay, Akshu?
Rosie, I was just thinking about this last point that you made. Like on days, it just feels like the chanting just becomes a mechanical process to a point where it is like completely distasteful. So I guess you answered that question. So we just continue chanting. Is that right?
Right, because this whole notion of see, when we are chanting, then we are doing Nam Seva, right? So we are not doing Seva Nam. We are not taking worship. We are not taking service from the name. So when you say that chanting is distasteful, what is the opposite of that? My expectation is that chanting should make me happy, right? So you are expecting the holy name to be your servant, right? Come, I'm in a bad mood today. Krishna, come and make me feel happy, right? That's not the mood of chanting. So when you give up chanting with this assumption that today is distasteful, right? Then the idea is I will chant when you make me feel happy, right? So philosophically that notion is misaligned, right? So you're doing Nam Seva. You know, all of us have jobs. Someday we go to jobs in a jolly mood. Someday we are like, I wish I could stay home, and but we still do the job, right? You still see your patients, and you still kill the mice, and take their blood. So you still do all that, right? Whether you like it, like Prabhu was saying that he does not like doing it, but it's just
Part of his job description.
it's the nature of the job. We do it, right? Because we have this notion that we are servants. We are government servants. We are servants of the company that employs us, right? So that automatically puts our personal aspirations at a lower level. Similarly, when we Nam Seva, when we think we are serving a name, some days we'll be happy, we'll serve it nicely. Some days we'll not be happy, and we may not serve it nicely. But that's a job description, right? Chant 16 rounds or whatever it's called.
Vijay, one question. So you said about the example earlier. So the chanting without beads, does it have any potency? I mean, sometimes we don't have time. We may be working or maybe driving and we'll be chanting, not be exactly counting how many rounds. Or does it really have any effect? Or
Of course. Yeah, the chanting will always have.
Sure.
Chanting will always have an effect. The supporting angas are there to establish that notion of, like I said, the first thing is sankalp. The supporting angas are to establish that notion of sankalp. That, I will chant one round every day. Right? How do you know you've chanted one round? You chant on beats. I chant 4 rounds. How do I know? So they are supporting angas that they nourish this primary sankalp. And the other thing also is that when we chant on the beads, especially if we are chanting on Tulsi beads, then we are associating with another devotee of Krishna. So then she also helps us.
Yeah, I was just going to say that the only threat we have, threat to chanting, is that when we are doing Vaishnava, that completely kills the desire as well as the sweetness that you want to experience in chanting. That's one thing we have to be afraid of, is never to commit Vaishnava.
I think there's a conversation or a statement that if you do Dham Aprad, then you can take shelter of Seva Aprad. Take shelter of Seva, sorry. So Dham Aprad is you commit offenses in a holy name, you take shelter of Seva, which is worshipping the deities. If you do Seva Aprad, then you can take shelter of Nam. And if you do Nam Aprad, you can take shelter of Vaishnava. If you do Vaishnava Apradh, then only that Vaishnava can give you shelter. So Mahaprabhu was very strong in terms of being careful about, called it the mad elephant offense. Very careful about that. There's a pastime of in Vrindavan that once Rupa Goswami was sitting and chanting. And while you were chanting, and pure devotees when they chant, and Nam, Rupa and Leela, they all manifest. So from the name, some Leela were manifesting, and the Leela is described as a long Leela, but he is meditating on that Leela and of Krishna torturing Radharani. And as he's meditating on that Leela, he's laughing. And it so happened that there was a Brahman who was passing by at the time, and the Brahman had a deformed body. So the Brahman thought that he was laughing at him. And even the Rupa Goswami didn't even see him, he was so much absorbed in his meditation, but the fact that the Brahman didn't even take offense because he knew that Rupa Goswami was an exalted Vaishnava, but he felt hurt. And because of that, Rupa Goswami immediately lost taste for chanting. And he was in the purified state that he could detect that completely. It was from day to night. So he went to his elder brother, Sanatana Goswami. So this is what happened. Sanatana Goswami says that the only thing that can have such a strong effect on the chanting is if you have offended any Vaishnava. He thought about it, I don't think I offended any Vaishnava. And then he said, you ask around and find out. So then he started asking around, and then this particular Brahmin, he had also shared with somebody that I'm not sure what happened, this is what happened. So when Rupa Goswami went and fell at the feet of the Brahman, he asked for his forgiveness. And the Brahman, of course, was more than happy to forgive. But the pastime indicates that, now Rupa Goswami is at a different level, that even accidental offenses had such a deep impact. But in our case, at least what we should try is to protect ourselves from deliberate offenses against Vaishnavas. Okay, so we'll stop over here. We have Damodar Ashtakam now? Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.